Okay, welcome back to What If History Restarted. This is episode 53. Last time we saw a civil war in South America, a civil war in Indonesia, a war up here in North America, which was pretty weird and confusing, and the tide of the war kept shifting over and over again, but eventually ended like this. Pretty much everybody won except for these guys, so and then what else? Oh yeah, also this country, which was formerly one country, well hold on, this was all owned by this country, but then one country broke off, and then this country immediately shattered into four pieces, although peacefully, pretty much. But it did leave this Sudanese country landlocked. I guess you'd call this Sudanese. But yeah, today we're going to be looking more at South and Central America. Now up here we're going to specifically focus in on this Yucatan country. These guys are kind of like the USA of this world because I believe that they were the first colony to rebel and become independent, and since then they have become the dominant power in North America. They are experiencing some competition now, mainly from Louisiana and especially Alabama, but also a little bit from these guys up in the north that were formerly a Danish colony. This Arizonan country tried to become a rival, but it kind of failed. California isn't that strong militarily, but they do have a really great economy, rivaling this country's economy even. They do have pretty good relations with this Ecuadorian country, but they do also have some competition war with these three Brazilian countries, especially the blue one, with the horrible border door. I mean, look at that. But anyway, these guys have kind of acted like a peacekeeping force in this region, and we're going to see that is going to that trend is going to be continued and shown off, because I got a burp, but I can't. Wait, maybe I can. Nope, it's gone. Oh no, it's coming back, but now it's gone. But anyway, these three countries over here broke off during World War One, when this country was in World War One, and then they all rebelled and became their own countries. However, these guys are pretty poor, and a lot of them, well, all three of them, all want more land so they can be less poor. And so eventually we're going to see that things are going to boil over, and we just straight up have this one invading this country, with the only excuse literally just being that they want money for their people. And, it's kind of ignoring that there's people starving in this country as well, but shh. So yeah, once this war breaks out, the Yucatan country is going to be... Oopsie doodles, hello Mr. Delivery Driver. But anyway, yeah, these guys are kind of that peacekeeping force, like I've said a trillion times. So they're gonna go over to this country and be like, hey, you guys wanna stop that? And these guys say no. And yeah, that's not too great. So now these guys, they're already very late. It's hard to do invading color, but I guess we just have to do this. These guys immediately land over here in Cuba and start rolling into actually both countries' territory. And yeah, now the reason for this is that they're saying we want some land because then we can help support the people here. And that might be true, it might not be, they might just be greedy, but who knows? I do. I'm not telling you though. The country owns this pixel of land. Who is that? Oh, it's you. No, we're gonna keep that, 'cause that's funny. But yeah, these guys keep moving into Cuba. Cuba now starts, island hopping. They go up here, and now they're like, hey, no, don't do that. We just helped you undo what the other team was doing, and now you're doing that same thing. So these guys are kind of just gonna have to agree to that. And eventually, we kind of see that around here, they're like, okay, you guys wanna talk with that? What was that? They're like, okay, you guys wanna talk it out now? And eventually, these countries are going to agree. And, well, I should probably just do this. Bam, 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 bam. Looking at this peace treaty, we're going to be seeing that these guys don't actually take too much land. However, they do take this city. That's pretty much all they wanted. And because that's where most of the people in this area are, half of them live in the city. So now that's theirs to help manage and supply. Over here, they would have given Cuba, like, the rest of this. However, Cuba then started doing their island hopping things, and now they're like, no, nope, no extra land for you. But yeah, so now we see that these two countries that are already poor are now war torn. Yes, these poor countries are now war torn, making them more poor. Wow. But anyway, because of this, obviously they, you know, if these guys just left them like that, then that would, kind of go against the whole point of fighting them, because that would actually do the exact opposite thing from what they were trying to achieve, and Y is just discolored. But yeah, so these guys are going to deliver a significant amount of, like, military and money, well, mainly just money, aid to these countries, financial aid, that sounds better. And eventually they kind of get these guys up and running a little bit more. However, over in this other country that we haven't talked about yet, there is some more, like, disagreements on how to handle the actual money. These Caribbean islands are actually, like, pretty diverse from one another in this timeline. So we are going to see that these guys are, unable to decide how to distribute the funds to their territory, and eventually this half of it is going to break off and form its own country. What should be a good color? We could do like a... No, we have our red right there. I guess we could do like a cyanish country. But yeah, this country over here breaks off, and they are pretty long. And yeah, that is our first war with the video done. As we can kind of see from like this episode and the past one, there's slowly starting to be like more and more countries starting to be created, because nationalism and, human rights and the right to govern for a country, well, for a people to govern itself by being their own country, is actually being like recognized and supported now. World War I has kind of definitely allowed it to surface because everyone's too weak to stop it. But oh well. But yeah, we're now moving into like the 30s, and there obviously this is when the Great Depression was in our timeline, and these guys actually managed to avoid that for now, but like they almost get there, but they do not quite get there. Anyway, sticking in South America, we now gotta talk about these guys. Now, if you don't know the lore behind this country, you can see they kind of stick out like a sore thumb on the ethnicity map, because basically they're just like they never actually got colonized, because they're literally just the Amazon rainforest, as you can see. And they're literally just a bunch of, like, tribes that have united into their own country, so to say. But there's not really even, like, a government. I'm not even sure whether I should include a capital. I guess we can just say that's where, like, the richest person in the country lives, because that's the best you could really say, because, like, it's just anarchy here. There's, like, about 5 laws which aren't even really enforced. And, yeah, these guys are interesting. They, like, obviously these borders aren't too well, like, managed, because, once again, they're literally the rainforest. And I'm pretty sure the city is in the middle of the rainforest, but, oh well, we're just gonna say that these people just love to live in the horrible jungle. I believe there is actually a city on the Amazon River in real life, like, pretty deep into the forest, but it still, like, actually has a good amount of people. So this is probably something like that. But there's literally just, like, a bunch of people in the city and then absolutely nobody else around it. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, these guys, obviously, these borders aren't too well enforced, but these guys, even if they were well enforced, still probably wouldn't really care, because they don't really believe in borders, they believe in anarchy. And some of these other countries are starting to get really annoyed by these guys, as, well, like I just mentioned, this Peruvian country. I mean, they have this city right here, like, on the border almost, and sometimes these guys just like to, hop on in here and, like, burn stuff down, and it's not too great. I mean, they usually just arrest the people themselves, but now it's starting to get to a point where, like, after one especially large arson attack, they're kind of done with them now. So they're going to go to all these countries, and they're like, we gotta do something about these guys, please. all these other countries kind of accept, because they also have all, like, anybody from these countries who is like just on the border and gets spotted gets like captured and kidnapped and killed and all that. So like, no one really wants this country to exist. And so eventually this country is going to rally up literally every country that borders this country. And there you can see that that's literally just them and the rest of this in the entire star. Yeah, this is a star. Them and the entire Arrow Alliance. They are not in the Arrow Alliance because they are kind of more independent and they're also a little bit more corrupt. But shh. And so, but either way, all these countries do agree to join their side here. We see this massive coalition just go on in to the jungle. So you have Brazilian troops pouring in from their panhandle, which is literally like half of their country. We see the northern Brazilian country, most of its border is at least one straight line. They are going to go in as well. I mean, obviously I don't really say this for every country, because every country that borders this country is now going into it. And honestly, this country's probably also joined in on it as well. Maybe this guy, but they probably don't really care because they're pretty far. Same with this country. They're also they're even more distant to the Star Alliance, or I mean to the Arrow Alliance, because like at least this country was on the same side as the Square Alliance, which is kind of what this Arrow Alliance came from. But those guys were on the opposing side, so like it's because I actually kind of hate these guys. So these guys definitely wouldn't join in. And plus, they don't border this country. But yeah, all these nations start pouring in. However, they kind of they overestimated their own crews, because, I mean, this is the Amazon rainforest. And so they do keep invading. However, it is getting very difficult, and a ton of people are dying because, once again, it's the Amazon rainforest. Not to mention, these guys are using some crazy guerrilla warfare tactics. And so while these guys are slowly getting pushed back, it is like extremely slow. Like this lasts for probably a solid 5 years of death, and actually just like a lot of death. Like this is not just a little small invasion from each country. This is like a lot of their military, and they are all suffering some extreme losses. And in the end, this country now starts making a massive counteroffensive. They are much more used to the land. They're much more adapted to it, and they've been underestimated a little bit because they just kind of assumed that they would just be fighting them with like spears, but like they have some good technology. Plus, they steal guns off of corpses and all that. So yeah, they're very good at hiding and ambushing. Eventually, we see that the borders or the front lines, I guess, are kind of like just look like this, and then it just kind of stalemates. And from there isn't really much else that can be done. So now we just kind of have, because obviously these guys can't really even sign a peace treaty, and even if they could, they would not want to, because they are anarchy. And so we just kind of see that like the front lines become the new borders, because that's kind of the only thing that can happen. And we're going to see that the new borders are going to look something like this. These guys do go on a pretty big counteroffensive over here, though, right at the end. And they managed to take some. They still lose some land to the Ecuador country, but not that. Well, yeah, they just not that much. But they actually managed to gain some land out of the Venezuelan country. So that's embarrassing. So yeah, this war has been a massive failure, and all they've done now is given these guys some guns from their own men's corpses. So that's fun. And now these guys are even more annoying and bigger of an issue. So hooray, we did it, guys. Anyway, we're now finally going to move back over to Europe. And obviously this place has been pretty war-torn, especially in like the losing countries, but even in the winning countries, like right near the end of the war, Austria actually managed to do a pretty successful counteroffensive into Tuscany. They literally had like, they literally had like all of this land. So it was actually probably more than that, really, like Tuscany almost lost right at the end. But, yeah, so they still are a little bit better off, though. Yeah, these countries, like Austria, for example, and of course, like, especially these two, Catalonia and Gibraltar, or not Gibraltar, Galicia, these guys have been hit pretty hard. And so there aren't, there's definitely some more radical ideologies developing, but it's nothing, too bad. They aren't, like, going fully fascist or anything. But, yeah, they are definitely struggling, and eventually things are going to boil over in one of these three countries. Well, actually, four, because Denmark also, but, I mean, obviously, since I didn't mention Denmark before, obviously it's not going to be Denmark, so one of these three countries is, about to go into a civil war, and it is Galicia. Galicia, I don't know. But yeah, people here who have been, like, I think these are all, yeah, it's all the Gibraltar religion, but, like, these people specifically, well, actually, it'd probably be southern people. But yeah, these people have been hit very hard by the war, and they feel that the government is not giving them as much relief as they should be. And so these guys, they ended up actually winning this war in a landslide, becoming the new government. And now this country, I mean, at first they try to just, like, actually improve things and be more helpful, and, actually give everybody support. But pretty quickly that starts to not work, and these guys start to run out of money. And from there, they kind of adopt a little bit more of an authoritarian government, and that's great. Again, we're seeing a lot of that happening across the world. Anyway, slightly different topic now. Tuscany. Now, this city right here has been their capital since they were founded, and Tuscany is an extremely old country. It's like probably since BC times. Now, obviously, it's not like the same government, because that would be like if Rome had somehow continued all the way to modern day Italy. But, like, you could say, or, like, for example, like, you could say that Turkey is the Ottoman Empire, even though obviously it's not the same government, but it's kind of like the same nation in a way. It's not necessarily the same state. Like, obviously it's like that, and obviously I'm talking about real world Turkey, not this world's Turkey, because there is not really a Turkey in this real world. But yeah, real world Turkey is like that, and it's kind of like Tuscany, because, like, obviously it's not the same government from 1,000 years, from like 5,000, not 5,000, but like from 2,000 years ago. But it's kind of the same nation and people, and it's like a direct descendant of that original government. So yeah, this capital has been the capital for an extremely long time, but things are now starting to change, because over here, if you haven't seen the series before episode 50, or before episode 51 really, then what are you doing, first of all? But second of all, there used to be a country right here, looks something like this, which was Belgium. I think they had a little bit more down here. But yeah, Belgium got fully annexed after World War One, and now Tuscany owns all of this, including Belgium's capital, which was actually like very prosperous. And Tuscany's original capital was like very good for them, and it kind of helped them become a world power, because like it was right on the Mediterranean Sea, which was like, in older times, the most important body of water to have access to. But now it's definitely a lot better to have more access to the mainland Atlantic Ocean, because that, we're all globalized now. And so Tuscany is going to move their capital. They decide on it. They still need to figure out where. Basically, they want to make it a vital city, obviously. So that leaves them with 4 vital cities that are directly on the coast of the thing of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, one of these is deep in dark blue ethnicity territory, so I don't want to put it there. So that's one of them eliminated. But now I have these 3. Now, there's 2 things that they could kind of look for, which are 1, how big the city is, and 2, how, culturally relevant the city is. This country they aren't that big, and also they're part of Belgium. I mean, they're like barely vital city territory, and were just annexed, so obviously they kind of aren't that good, so not one of them. So we see that these 2 these 2 cities both kind of match one of the 2 requirements. This one is a very big and prosperous city, and it could actually be pretty good, especially considering that, the UK is right here. This one, though, even though it's a lot smaller and more, not good, it is, has been in the Tuscan nation for an extremely long time. And so, I just realized my Wi-Fi is not working. Hopefully hopefully that doesn't mess with the recording. But anyway, so that means that they have to pick between, actual prosperousness or cultural relevance. And, I mean, Tuscany is a greedy 20th century capitalist thing. So, maybe unsurprisingly, they're going to choose the more prosperous one, and they're going to move their capital officially up here to Belgium. And by this point, honestly, these guys are more just France than Tuscany. Especially, now that's really been certified because now they no longer have this Tuscan city as a capital. So, this might take some getting used to, but I think I'm going to start calling this country France because that is essentially what they are now. But yeah, this episode was a little bit shorter, and not that much really happened, but it's kind of actually just going to be the end now. So, yep, goodbye.